on everyone's lips is this incredibly harsh? Is a 13-year-old will now have a criminal record whose life will be changed? And of course, one can say, well, it's terrible what she did. But one can also say,
it was good.
Well, one can also cite one can cite many examples of the two-tier care, two-tier justice, where we see violent criminals going free, very small sentences. Lawson Natty springs to mind, the guy who has handed the machete to, bought the machete that the other guy killed someone. Yeah. He got 6 months for manslaughter.
14-year-old kid killed with a machete, and Keir Starmer lets the guy go free, so this 13-year-old can get locked up.
And it's not a great time to be a 13-year-old white girl. You know, you assume she's white since she's been the victim of two-tier justice. In this country, you know, you can be basically raped and tortured on an industrial scale, and the authorities will say, oh, let's not look at that. But you kick a door and you're in big trouble. Now, some people say, this is terrible what she did, but I'm just giving you the full picture.
Yeah.
Well, it's the age, isn't it? That's the thing. We all know she's going to be tainted for the rest of her life. This is going to follow her. It seems inappropriate.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much it will taint her or follow her around, but I mean, I just think it's ridiculous that...
It's a record, isn't it? So it's not something...
Yeah, but once people find out, they'll probably buy her a pint. I mean, it's, you know... It's not like, you know, Hugh Edwards or something like that, who actually didn't get any jail time. Hugh Edwards didn't get any jail time for having the worst possible child abuse material on his phone, and then he conveniently lost the phone, so the police can't even see if there's any other stuff. Anyway,
That's true, but I think we can confidently say that will follow him around for the rest of his life.
Oh, yeah, that'll follow him around, but, you know, I mean, everybody does stupid things when they're 13.
Following young people around. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't want to say it.
I think what's ridiculous here is we're sort of elevating the feelings of these male migrants from, you know, war-torn countries with, you know, from quite medieval, barbaric, misogynist cultures, some of them, and you know, we're saying, oh, they were terrified because this 13-year-old was kicking a door. Like, so these adult males were terrified because a 13-year-old girl was kicking a door. What about the feelings of these 13-year-old girls who don't want these unvetted migrants being dumped in their communities? And we've seen what happens, you know, when the government does this. If they're so great, dump them outside Emma Thompson's house. You know, dump them in Islington. Why dump them with the people who want them?
There's one other strange aspect that Patrick just played in his show, where the police said that her parents were both Reform UK voters in the report. And there was some question of why is that in the report? It's just trying to sort of say that these are wrong uns, right? These are
well, it's trying to link Farage's party with the riot.
Well, yeah, but is that the kind of thing that should be in there? That's what I'm saying.
I think that's absolutely outrageous.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's like the link between, you know, Antifa and Labour. So, you know, you've got left-wing, you know, if you go too far to the left and you start, you know, becoming violent and, you know, committing disorder, which, you know, obviously is terrible, whether it's done by the right or done by the left or just done by silly 13-year-old girls. But, you know, I guess it's the same sort of...
I've got to say, no, Reform were not responsible for the riot.
Oh, no, they're not responsible at all. But, I mean, Labour aren't responsible for Antifa.
Excellent.
Yeah. Yeah. But just lastly on the, I'm not condoning it, but yeah, 13-year-old girl, does she really know what she's doing? How autonomous is she? She's not old enough to consent, she's not old enough to vote, etc. So I think that is the key point.
OK, let's go back to Leo with the Mail.
So this has Charles, I won't stop Australia ditching Crown. So this is ahead of his historic tour. The King has told activists that he has a deep love for Australia, but he wouldn't block moves for it to become a republic. And I don't know, this is just like a week after we gave away the Chagos Islands, and now we're giving away Australia, another nice big island.
I don't think they would want to be given away. They love us.
Yeah, but I was just in Australia at the weekend. I flew out there for the weekend for CPAC Australia. It was fantastic. Met a lot of people who watch Headliners. It seems to be popular down under. And normally I'd oppose this. I'd say, you know, no, Britain should cling on to you know, our brethren, our brother countries, our sister countries. But I don't know, Charles is just so insufferable. I sort of feel for the good of Australia, they should be cut free from his nannying hooks.
No, I disagree, because it's just so annoying that all our monarchs have done. I mean, we all loved our late Queen, but there's been this element of managed decline in the monarchy for a long time. It's all it's there for. It's like just to give away the Commonwealth and the Empire just sort of gradually. What's all that about? We should be taking stuff back.
Yeah.
I say, let's start claiming some islands.
Charles should be leading a new crusade. Is what we do.
I disagree with that. I just think we should be violently claiming islands. But I disavow whatever Leo said. We should send in the Navy. We don't have a Navy anymore, do we? It's like 10 guys. Yeah. We just send in those 10 blokes. Let's capture the Chagos. Sorry, Carol.
Come on, it's not 10 men.
No, you're right.
We should invade New Zealand while a fifth of their naval fleet is underwater. because it's DEI hires driving
Leo
it.
curse.
Good point.
Honestly. OK, finishing us off, I didn't write that. It's Nick with the Sun.
Sure, it's squeaky bug time. And the story is that Erik ten Hag, who is Man United's beleaguered manager, because United have, I think it's their worst Premier League start in history, and they're struggling a bit. And I'm a lifelong United fan, but I haven't even had time to watch it recently. But the overall message is we're not doing well. But a Villa fan sneaked into the dressing room and stuck a bugging device in the away dressing room. It's kind of like Watergate or something. And so they've got Erik ten Hag. The Sun has the recordings, but because, the Sun is the height of integrity, they're not releasing them. But they just say you can hear him addressing...
Sorry, so a football fan from the opposite side has somehow got into the... presumably quite secure changing room.
Not that secure. No, apparently not that secure.
They've planted a device.
Planted a device.
They're now able to listen to the...
And it was potentially
chat.
his last ever... It was like, it'd be like an Al Pacino speech in any given Sunday. It was like potentially his last ever one, but we drew, so we've survived. I just love it if you found the recording. It was just stuff like, because he's Dutch, like, hey, be good at football, yeah? Pass and score. Whatever it was like, it was just really terrible. You finally heard what the manager says behind the scenes. It's just rubbish. But yeah, I'd love to hear it and know what he said. Like, can you not cost me my job might have been one of the things.
And is it definitely done by a fan and not done by, big football?
Well, it could have been done by something like the next potential manager of Man United. That would be the smartest thing, wouldn't it? But yeah, I think it was a fan, I believe. Yeah.
Right.
Why would big football want to get rid of Ten Hag?
Or just to see what he's saying. Another.
Oh, the other team. Well, United are like 14th in the moment. I don't think the big teams even care.
Do you know how the Sun got hold of this then?
Well, no, I don't actually. They've someone's given them the recording. I guess maybe someone tried to sell it to them. The fan. I'm speculating.
So this might not be the last we hear of this then.
Maybe not, but they've obviously not played it because it's not very ethical, is it? It's like, here, this is a recording that someone illegally stuck in a dressing room. Like, you can't play it, right?
Yeah, well, you never know.
Maybe if we get hold of it on headliners, we'd play it.
TBC. All right, that's the front pages out of the way. Join us in part 2 for a story about a conflict of interests in politics. What? A story about a politician changing his mind. No way. And something about illegal immigration. That doesn't sound like us. See you in 2.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Founded in 1990 in Knightsbridge in London, the Beverly Hills Bakery offers some of the finest American baked goods in the United Kingdom. Beverly Hills Bakery has delivered gifts to all the UK Prime Ministers of the last 20 years, with, I think, the exception of Sir Keir Starmer so far, and provided gifts for the royal family and for royal births. As we near the 35th anniversary of the bakery, I'm joined by the owner and head pastry chef, Rosa de Souza, and Manuel de Souza, who is the director of the Beverly Hills Bakery. How marvellous to see you both. Welcome to GB News.
Thank you for inviting us.
So, why has this formula worked? Why did London need a Beverly Hills Bakery?
What we do is we're a bakery, but underlying it's actually a gifting experience.
Right.
So this is an alternative to flowers. So in terms of concept, that has maintained its originality despite going on for 35 years. And in fact, what I do is I often ask myself, why is it going strong? To remind myself to focus on those things that we need to focus on.
So instead of sending a bunch of flowers, you send a beautiful box of cakes like that, or confection like that, complete with bunnies and so on.
Exactly. So you have the concept on the one hand, but you also need the quality of product that goes inside. And I think that's where Beverly Hills Bakery has got a great product.
And it's where Rosa comes in, isn't it?
Yes.
So when did you start to bake? Did you start to bake domestically in your home, and did it spread from there?
We started from home. My mother's baking, where we didn't have all the stoves and things like that. We baked on the charcoal, like degrees.
Yes.
And we started baking. I learned from my mother the baking.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Conservative MPs have finally chosen their top 2 for the leadership. And now, it's over to the members. Join me, Christopher Hope, on Thursday as Kevin Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are quizzed by Conservative Party members and myself at our GB News leadership event.
And afterwards, join me, Patrick Christie, from the live studio audience and a star panel as we discuss what it means for the Conservative Party and what it means for you. Decision time, the race to lead, from 7 p.m. this Thursday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, beginning this section with Saturday's Guardian. And some people would like to see Lord Welney just stopping Just Stop Oil, Leo.
That's right. Well, Keir Starmer has been urged to sack his extremism advisor, that guy you just mentioned, Lord Walney. Is it Walney Woodcock, it says here, over alleged conflicts of interest. This is campaigners say that John Woodcock has commercial interest in organisations whose clients were targeted by protesters. So he's got this conflict of interest. He called for the effective banning of some direct action groups, including Just Stop Oil and Palestine Action, who, you know, they sound like they're different. They've got different causes, but they all look exactly the same, and they all look like they need a bath but have surprisingly rich parents. And basically, his conflict of interest, he's the chair of the Purpose Business Coalition, whose members include the weapons manufacturer Leonardo and the oil company BP. It's good to see the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles moving into weapons manufacturing. And he's also employed by a lobbying firm called Ruud Peterson Group. He's a senior advisor there, and they have as clients the oil and gas companies Glencore and Enwell Energy, and on their website they list security and defence as a sector of expertise. So on one hand, you know, you might say, well, this guy's got an obvious incentive to try and stop Just Stop Oil or Palestine Action targeting these companies. But on the other hand, anybody with expertise in this area of business and in the area of extremism is going to be employed, you know, sitting on various boards, working as an advisor to companies like this. So it's like trying to recruit a football referee who has never played football. It's, you know, it's a nonsense. I think he's probably doing a good job. He's approaching it objectively, and the fact that he's, you know, found that these organisations should be banned is in no way a sign of a conflict of interest.
Yeah, well, just to clear up, I mean, he's Lord Walney because that's the place in Barrow,
right.
It's in Barrow near where I'm from. So, but he's called John Woodcock, but he's Lord. Just to clear that up for the fans at home. And yeah, this is. I mean, it would be. He's done some good things as well. He's recognised the problem with these marches and Just Stop Oil, who everyone hate. So he has done some good things. So I'm annoyed about this. The only thing that's sort of quite amusing is that the far left are generally going after Starmer. That's the only thing I like in general, because you've got these nutters like the Good Law Project and these kind of people, but they're going after Starmer. It's a bit like we had the Independents the other day who were all voting with the Tories on VAT for schools and all that kind of thing. So Starmer has this threat from the actual, you know, the far lefties, which I find kind of amusing, but not really in this case. He is a former Labour MP, but he's a Boris Johnson appointment, so it's a bit... He's sort of semi-all right.
Yeah, centrist.
Yeah.
Both places.
Well, and he's saying that everything that his conclusions were meticulously reached, objectively reached, and all his interests were properly declared.
Yeah.
So that will annoy Labour, won't it? Because they don't like things being declared.
Nice.
Yeah, at least he's been upfront about it.
How many Taylor Swift tickets did he get? This is what we need to know.
And if you apply this, you know, this reductive process, then eventually you're going to get to the point. The only people Just Stop Oil will be happy with, you know, in this place, fulfilling this role, is going to be some absolute stinky dreadlocked hippie who completely agrees with Just Stop Oil, and that's not going to happen. It's going to be somebody who's got a job, and that job is probably going to be linked to business in some way, because jobs generally are. So that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Ban them. OK, sticking with The Guardian, and Robert Jenrick has changed his mind about his misanthropic past behaviour, but I bet you still love him, don't you, Nick?
Well, you know, let's say it's Jenrick suggests he regrets removing Disney murals from Asylum Seeker Centre. And this, of course, he was grilled by Nick Ferrari on LBC. If you don't remember it, there was these Disney murals welcoming people who shouldn't be in our country into the country. And he sort of said, like, take them down. Why should we be sort of giving them a reward? Like, hey, welcome to Disneyland, a.k.a. the UK, where you get to sponge off the rest of us, which is a kind of Disneyland. But he said he was maybe a bit harsh and he probably would have done things differently. But it's trivial nonsense. He was right at the time. It doesn't matter. He's just getting grilled because he's, you know, going with Tory leader. It doesn't matter at all. He was right at the time. it's a Guardian piece, and it's kind of interesting. They go on to claim that moderate Conservatives are said to be so dismayed at the remaining candidates, which of course is Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick, that they're considering spoiling their ballots. And it's just this silly narrative now that Cleverly was the centrist, and these are far-right people. It's so absurd. The reality is the so-called One Nation Wets are just an elite that's wildly out of touch with the members and with the country, and they're getting their comeuppance.
And in fairness to Jenrick, I mean, these asylum seeker kids have enough on their plate without Disney murals trying to turn them into transgender communists.
That's a good point.
You know, I think there's that. And also, lots of EU countries completely ignore the ECHR and, you know, just ignore the rulings and do what they want to do. I mean, you can see Germany at the moment is looking at passing emergency rules so it can close its borders. So Britain is one of the few countries that actually sticks to the rulings of the ECHR. So, I mean, the fact that we stick to it is the reason that we need to leave it. Or we just need to start breaking the rules a bit.
Fair enough. To me, this makes him seem very different to Kemi Badenoch, because she's in this thing at the moment where every time she says something, she gets challenged, and then she starts talking about Margaret Thatcher and says, no, I stick by what I did. And this is quite flip-floppy, isn't it, from him?
Yeah.
Sort of saying, oh, no, I wouldn't do it now.
He's quite agreeable as a person. He's sort of quite agreeable. He's not Kemi, where it's like, I just, you know, don't care about being rude and upsetting people. He's kind of a nice guy.
And I think
Kemi's not a nice guy.
He's probably trying to hoover up some of James Cleverly's votes. So some of the wets who don't, you know, throw their toys out the pram and who do stay in the next vote, they might cast a vote for him.
And he said he'll give Cleverly a place in his shadow cabinet. There are probably lots of people are saying things like that. He probably actually will, though.
Yeah, good point. OK, a story about the sanctity of family now in the Telegraph, Nick. Yeah,
this is an Albanian murderer wins right to stay in UK under ECHR. That is the one you meant, right? Because the link was confusing me. So this was an Albanian, Fatma Bletter, who's 64, and he allegedly shot a man in the head with a Kalashnikov rifle, and he was sentenced to 13 years in prison for this. And he came to Britain and sought asylum, falsely claiming to be a Kosovan. So, of course, this is the kind of person that the ECHR is desperate to protect. But he succeeded in resisting an attempt by the Home Office to deport him on grounds it would breach his Article 6 rights to a fair trial under the ECHR. Some would say that's why we need to leave. And there's this other part that is hard to talk about because it's ongoing, where he appealed under Article 8. And he said that deportation would breach his right to a family life and be unduly harsh on his loved ones, presented without comment. But the other thing, just to be very fair, he claims that he didn't do any of this. He said, I'm clear of everything. He said he didn't do this. He's clear in Albania, and it's all false, and his daughter's saying the same. So that's his take on it. Some would say, and I'm quite worried because if he did shoot someone in the head, I don't want to speak too ill of him. I quite like my head, but that's purely satire. Of course, he's completely innocent. But this is why we need to leave the ECHR very quickly.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous. There's so many cases like that. Like the tube pusher, the guy who pushed somebody under a tube train, nearly killed him. I think he was supposed to have been deported at some point. And there doesn't seem to be any... I understand we've got procedures and we've got to vet people to see if they can stay. If they can't stay, we've got to at least... Please, can we not just deport the murderers? Please, just, you know, if we... maybe the murderers and the rapists.
Because we're now thinking about his family. This would be unduly harsh on the family that he's got here.
That's what happens when you murder somebody. You get sent to prison.
He says he denies.
It's very traumatic. No, but he's been convicted. So...
But why does it say allegedly then? It still says allegedly in the piece.
There's a mixture of reports going on here, isn't there?
Oh, right. He was convicted.
I'm just going to keep saying allegedly.
His daughter's convinced he didn't do it.
Allegedly shooting a man.
Really? Oh, why didn't you say that before?
Leo, it says allegedly. Who amongst us hasn't allegedly shot a man in the head?
For which he was convicted and sentenced in his absence to 13 years in prison.
Well, they put allegedly in their Telegraph, so I'm going to say allegedly a lot of times.
Yeah,
Albania has an absolutely cast iron criminal
justice
justice
need more
system.
Albanians in the country. That's my position.
We need Albanian judges because they find people guilty.
Yeah, we need to rethink this whole human rights thing.
Yeah.
It sounded good, didn't it? Human rights. Oh, yeah, who doesn't like that? Turns out to be a terrible idea. Let's take away all those rights. Except, weirdly, the one that Jeremy Corbyn wanted, which is broadband for all. That's the only one I support.
Brilliant. OK, finally in this section, The Guardian, again, with news of a new facility that only accepts men. That's a bit sexist, isn't it? What if loads of women turn up here?
Then they'll probably have a lot of fun. So this is an Italian migration centre, well, two centres that are opening in Albania under a controversial deal. So Italy has formally opened two centres in Albania where it plans to hold men who are intercepted in international waters while trying to cross from Africa to Europe. So many of them go to Italy, they land on the Italian islands, and so Italy takes in a huge proportion of the migrants that come into Europe. But there are fears that this agreement will set a dangerous precedent for the European Union, with up to 3,000 men a month held during asylum processing. I mean, some would say fears, others would say hopes, because I think Europe does need to get a grip on illegal immigration and, you know, stop the asylum system being exploited by people who are essentially economic migrants or who would just rather live in Europe than whatever awful country they come from. So this is sort of like the Rwanda scheme, except Europe doesn't have this sort of systemically woke civil service that completely stymies the government at every
There's
point.
nobody in it yet, is there? But they're saying it's ready to go.
It's ready to go.
It's ready.
And Albania, I don't know, maybe we should have, instead of Rwanda, maybe we should have used Albania, because it's closer, it doesn't sound as, you know, radically different. It's...
No, I think we would be in exactly the same position, wouldn't we, if we'd done this and if we'd tried to do the Rwanda plan, if it'd been the Albania plan?
Oh, yeah, because all the lefties in our country will stop us doing anything. But, yeah, I mean, at least Maloney's trying to do something. She says the most useful element is a deterrent effect, which sounds reasonable. I just think we need to do something. This is the problem of our age. We need to do something to stop all the people desperately risking their lives to get into the racist, patriarchal West. That's so appalling. It's such a terrible place that everyone is so desperate to get into. Yeah. We have to stop them at all costs. I always wonder how the lefties square those two things with themselves. You know, the idea that we need to let all these people in. It's terrible. They have to be able to come here with this is a hellhole, hellscape.
Well, look, they are very vulnerable people, aren't they? By the time you've committed to coming, you don't really know where you're going. You don't know what you're going to find. So I can understand why people are concerned about them. Médecins Sans Frontières sort of stepped in and said this goes one step beyond previous agreements. And there's people calling it the Italian Guantanamo. I mean, I hope it doesn't turn into that.
I mean, it's obviously not Guantanamo because people were held there, you know, without trial for decades. So it's nothing like that. It's got a specific purpose to process asylum.
They're saying potentially. It's got potential here to be the new Guantanamo.
Yeah, I think it's ridiculous. And I think Europe, across Europe, because governments, just like the British government, hasn't got a grip on the problem with illegal immigration, which is completely unsustainable. And also, all these people who say, "Oh, we need to hit net zero," do you think that's going to be helped by people coming from, you know, countries in the third world where not much carbon is used per person? You bring those people to the West where they're going to use lots of carbon. It's going to be disastrous for our carbon emissions.
They will come over with bits of coal in their pockets, I've heard, and they just start burning them willy-nilly.
And the far right. I mean, people say the far right. I call them sensible mainstream centrists, but they're on the rise across Europe because this hasn't been dealt with. And I think if things like this aren't done, then you're going to see some pretty radical political upheavals in Europe. So this is really the establishment trying to, you know, finally, you know, put a stop to.
Well, I'll be really interested to see how this plays out. I imagine we'll probably revisit this story in the months to come.
Yeah.
OK, that's the end of part 2. Come back after the break for Obama trying to help, J.K. Rowling having another online spat, and the BBC trying to sort itself out. Don't go away.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, this weekend, it's going to be some unsettled weather around, but lots of dry and bright weather too, though it is going to still remain cold. At the moment, we've got high pressure to the south of the country and low pressure feeding in across Scotland, bringing an unsettled start to the weekend. And overnight too, as we see plenty of those blustery showers continue to feed across Scotland, some pushing into western parts of Northern Ireland too. These heavy at times, turning quite blustery, even seeing some sleet and snow over the Scottish peaks. But elsewhere, a bit more cloud around tonight, which means things aren't going to get quite as cold, but we may see pockets of frost still across parts of central England and Wales. It will still be a cold start though, perhaps just not quite as frosty, but across Scotland, still plenty of clouds, some longer spells of rain, these heavy at times, as I say, quite blustery under those cloudier skies too. A pretty wet start across Northern Ireland as well, but elsewhere, a fair amount of cloud around, some clearer spells. Can't rule out a few showers in parts of England too to start the weekend. Eventually, though, generally that cloud and rain that's generally across Scotland, Northern Ireland, it's slowly sinking its way towards the Scottish borders, northern parts of England, so quite a damp day on offer here. It is going to be clearing the north, still plenty of blustery showers here too. And across England and Wales, still can't rule out a chance of a shower, but across many parts of England and Wales, there'll still be plenty of bright weather. Still feeling cold, slight improvement in temperatures in the south, but feeling quite nippy in those blustery winds. For Sunday, it's going to be largely dry and bright across the country as we've got high pressure building. That's after quite a cold start, may even see quite a widespread frost in the north. But eventually we'll start to see some higher cloud building from the west as this frontal system tries to move its way in. So plenty of dry and bright weather over the weekend, although cold, and temperatures improving into next week.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm still here with two comedians identifying as panellists, Leo Kearse and Nick the Big Dog Dixon. So, Big Dog, starting this section with the Telegraph, and Obama's called your hero a bully. That's not very nice, is it, Nick?
He didn't call Jesus a bully. So it's Obama. Obama admonishes brothers for not coming out to vote for Kamala. So I watched this clip. It was Obama complaining that men, and particularly in this case black men, are not coming out for Kamala, and he says it seems to be more pronounced with the brothers, meaning a lack of turnout and a lack of engagement. And he says you all come up with all kinds of reasons and excuses. I've got a problem with that because part of me thinks that it's basically you aren't feeling the idea of having a woman as president. So he's telling them off for that. And I've seen a number of articles along these lines. The Hill had an article on it. New York Times covered this as well. And they're all saying, when they get people to quote on this, they all say, oh, yes, it's because we still have misogyny and men need to stop being misogynist. So just telling off men. So it works so well for Hillary Clinton, so they're doubling down on it. Let's keep telling off men. How about this? How about have a female candidate, wait, that's not awful, right? Tulsi Gabbard, men would vote for Tulsi Gabbard, right? We would not vote for Hillary or Kamala because they're rubbish. And also, they just don't have a good vibe. Kamala she's called the drunk wine aunt. That's the vibe she's got. Yeah. Hillary's got a kind of headmistress vibe.
A real Lisa Simpson.
Yeah, we don't vote for that vibe.
This is so exciting that you can see the difference. So you're not a misogynist, are you?
I'm not.
You know there could be a quality candidate and it just isn't one.
No, he hates women on different for different reasons.
Very nuanced. No, someone like Tulsi, she's got a military record. She has a lot of integrity, but she does also have a kind of, I hate to say, a kind of nurturing quality about her as well. She does seem feminine and strong at the same time. I sound like a feminist.
And attractive.
Well, I'm not allowed to comment on people's looks, but yeah.
No, but it makes a difference.
But they would vote for something like that.
Pages, being good-looking probably doesn't hurt.
But just to finish, Harris is not doing well with men, particularly Latino men, just massively come over to Trump, black men to some extent, and white men. So she's just not doing well with men. And the solution is not just to tell them off. Yeah. Sorry, Leo.
And I think it's got worse from Kamala as people have seen more of Kamala. Before, you just sort of saw her, you knew her face, but you never really heard her talk. Now that we've heard her talk, oh my God, that voice, and she's insufferable. She's every horrendous, nagging, longhouse sister-in-law, like equalities training. It's just that every man has experienced a woman like that, and it's always been a horrendous experience. So to have 4 years of her running the country is just, nobody wants that. And also it's interesting that the Democrats push this sectarian voting. So Obama's going out there and saying, hey, you brothers, quit jiving me, Turkey. Why aren't you voting for Kamala? And it's you don't see white people seem to be the only demographic group who don't push that sort of sectarian identity, race-based voting. You don't see Donald Trump going out there and being like, listen, if you're white, you've got to vote for me because I'm white too.
Right, the only thing we saw was white dudes for Harris, didn't we? We finally saw it, but for Harris, weirdly. Yeah, and then some people were saying, well, Trump should do this because Kamala finally addressed that. But you're right, we normally don't. In America, it's very much split along racial lines. And it's partly just the nature of politics. You go, we need this demographic, we've already got They're sort of saying we've already got the women. and they're just completely giving up on the men. But it's not going to be enough for her, obviously. I mean, if it's a fair election, I'm sure it'll be totally fair, then it's not going to be enough for her.
Do you think this is going to have any impact? Because to me, this is just going to push people into the arms of Trump.
It's just you saw Obama's speech that he was talking about Trump. He says, "Oh, look at this guy. He's like he only cares about money and status." I'm like, really, Obama? Is that what you're going with? I mean, and then he goes with like, "Oh, he's selling sneakers and all this." And he talks about Trump's brashness, but actually, men like Trump's brashness.
Yeah.
And they don't mind it.
Yeah, and Trump is always hustling, even though he's nearly 80. He's doing an amazing job. He's fantastic. But yeah, I can't remember what I was going to say.
Brilliant. OK, the Daily Mail now with a reminder that no good deed goes unpunished, Leo.
So this is J.K. Rowling, who's blasted Butlins, which is a sort of string of holiday parks, for suspending security guards after they forcibly ejected a group of transgender women from the ladies' lavatories at one of the holiday camps. So bosses at the seaside resort took the guards off duty following complaints against them, with Butlins later issuing an apology, insisting that it was an inclusive business where men dressed as women can poo wherever they want.
But do you realise this isn't standard Butlins? This is Bangface at Butlins. So this is a festival. My friend Patrick goes to this, and he's he works in tech now. He's in his 40s, but he's got his man bun. He always says he's been in the game so long. He went from the evolution of harem pants and wind chimes to glitter and leggings. Like, he's been in the world of festivals a long time, and he goes to this. So it's not Butlins. You first thought it was it's working class holidays on families on holiday. It isn't. It's people off their face who are likely to be the kind of people who would be upset about it.
Yeah, but I mean, so I've got a lot of sympathy for genuine trans people who put the effort in and look like women, who would get.
Here we go, Leo's.
You know what I mean?
Leo's scale again, where he gets to judge if they've put the effort.
It's the sensible rule. It's the obvious sensible. You've got to have sensible rules for things, and this is the only. What, you're going to make Blair White go into the gents?
You always say
That's
that.
mental.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
No,
that's all I do actually.
But
I follow Blair White. I get in the right toilet.
I googled these transgender women to see if I could crack one off. No, I googled them to have a look, and honestly, it's like Alice Cooper, and not Alice Cooper in the 70s. We're talking Alice Cooper now.
Recently, that's the key difference. OK, I've got a nuanced position on this, as you'd expect. The individual security guards may have been a little bit overzealous, right? But in general, why were there 5 trans people? Maybe they just all needed it at the same time. It seemed like they may have been making a bit of a point, and they were saying, no, get out. And you'd think, OK, well, the Butlins have dealt with it correctly, if a tiny bit overzealously. But no, of course they haven't, because they've apologised, they've basically sacked the people. So they've made it very clear where they stand. They say, we're an inclusive business, all that rubbish. So they've made it very clear that they stand against women's safety and in favour of this radical, dangerous ideology. So that's Butlins for you. So I think they should be called out by Rowling.
Well, I think a lot of their customers are going to be happy with that response.
You're saying that because they're these festival man-bun people?
Well, yeah, at the moment, I think they've probably done the right business decision. For the moment.
Yeah, I'm not sure, because I think a lot of the families, because Butlins is still mainly a family resort. I've performed at some of the weekend festivals for Butlins.
In that jacket.
Always.
There's a line in business decisions, because I'm obviously a feminist, Cressida, I know you're not. There's a line in business decisions where it's like, this is putting women at risk, so I say that's the hard line.
Yeah.
You're the hero we deserve, Nick.
Sorry.
OK, still in Saturday's Daily Mail. Nick, after this AI filter sounds more offensive than Lewis Schaper's photography.
Well, that would be going some. Yeah, AI... Oh, it just says... a lesbian... So I read AI. It says a lesbian psychologist has slammed Disney as homophobic after an AI filter turned her into a man. Of course, didn't actually turn her into a man. That takes, as Leo says, lots of surgery that he has to check. But it made her a man on the AI. And this kind of thing does happen. You may remember when Google erased all white people from existence. And you couldn't get a white person. There was even black Nazis and stuff. It was fascinating. And so this is a similar thing. It said, oh, you're probably a man. But I don't know why the headline has got away with calling it Disney, because the filter, it's on TikTok, is not affiliated with Disney in any way.
I think we've got the images. We've got the before and after when these...
Not of me.
People were getting married. So that's the real...
Here we go.
That's them.
Which one? The women or me and Nick?
The ones
We're actually women and they're really men.
And then the second picture shows you what this filter did to them. Oh, dear.
Yeah. But the thing is, if it's a Disney thing, then, it's set up to do a prince and a princess. So...
Yeah, they probably don't have the lesbian Disney filter in yet.
Yeah, which is ironic, because every Disney film for the last 5 years has been, lesbian.
They need to update
to be honest,
that.
I'm quite surprised.
Yeah.
Didn't expect it to be so.
But this isn't, like Nick says, this isn't an official...
It's not Disney, it's CapCut, which is just... There's nothing to do with Disney.
Yeah.
So the male should be sued for that, unfortunately.
Go. OK, The Guardian next, and a story about bullying in the workplace. Which workplace is that then, Leo?
It's not this workplace, Cressida, even though your comments about my jacket hurt me deeply.
If we had an HR department, you could complain.
We've got an excellent HR department.
Lewis wouldn't last very long. Go on.
So BBC staff should not feel fear or worry at work, says chair, as review begins. When they say chair, that's a person, not an actual chair. So apparently this is because a lot of BBC paedophiles say they feel unsafe now that some paedophiles are being arrested. No, it's not. It's actually to do with Hugh Edwards, who apparently didn't comport himself in a decent manner at work. As well as online.
That shocks me.
I know, can you believe it? So this report is going to focus on preventing abuse of power and ensuring everyone at the BBC conducts themselves in line with BBC values, the corporation said. So this is BBC values that are written down, not the BBC values from 1970s Top of the Pops or anything. But this comes after there's been a few scandals, like Amanda Abingdon, I think is slightly more minor than Hugh Edwards. She was like, oh, an Italian dance instructor shouted at me. It's like, yeah, he's an Italian dance instructor. What do you think's gonna... Have you seen this show? You know what I mean? It's like Gordon Ramsay shouted at me and said I was a silly sausage. It's like, yeah, that's what happens. Don't do the show.
Yeah, but Nick, you get annoyed with people at work behaving in ways that you don't like, don't you, sometimes? Isn't it good that they're checking in, they're saying, is everyone OK? Let's evaluate the way we do things.
Do you just mean Lewis taking photos of me that are totally... that I don't consent to? Yeah. That is pretty bad. Well, look... Number one, the BBC, here's a crazy idea, should stop hiring awful people. That's one of my ideas. But secondly, fear and worry, as you say, I said, fear and worry in the workplace is the norm for us. I mean, we get attacked. Some people, like, physically, there's incidents outside. We obviously have incidents online. Activist groups have tried to get certain people sacked. It doesn't matter who. But you see, we face this stuff all the time.
But they're not in the organisation.
So No, but I just say, of course, I struggle to have total sympathy because I face fear and worry every day, as you said, dealing with people like Lewis. Yeah. And I'm only joking, really. Of course, you should be safe at work. But there is a line, isn't it, where it just gets absurd. I mean, BBC seems to get a line kind of wrong, don't they? It's like, we'll have just some of the worst monsters in history. Yeah. Or we'll have, like, ultra HR, pussyfooting around stuff. It's like, can you just put it in the middle somewhere would be good, you know?
Yeah.
Good solution. OK, closing this section with the Times and the extraordinary news that we now know exactly who started Christmas Jumper Day at work, Nick.
Yes, it's worker who did not get leaving card loses harassment case. And this is someone who's literally called Karen. So I know some people don't like that term, but it's Karen. I mean, I won't even say her. Why do I need to bring out her second name? But it's someone called Karen. And she was not given her birthday card or leaving card, but it turned out it's just because no one had signed it, and the managers wanted to spare her feelings that apparently maybe no one liked, or at least hadn't got around to signing the card. And so she tried to sue them, and it didn't work, and they said they dismissed it as like nonsense, as saying there were normal interactions in the workplace. They had reasons for not giving it to you, your mental, basically. And perhaps her behaviour in suing kind of indicates why people might not have liked her. It would just be a guess on my part.
Extraordinary. It's 2024 and she's found the line. You know, we always say, where will this end?
Line, yeah.
It'll end with you, Karen.
But we do one of these every night. It's like, how unproductive is this country? Yeah. It's just clogged up with legal cases, and just businesses can't employ anyone because they're constantly suing about
I bet the lawyers
nothing.
Yeah.
I've got way more I could sue for than this. Go on.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, you were mentioning Lewis earlier. So apparently this Karen woman had exhibited a conspiracy theory mentality in the workplace, which actually we encourage. So maybe she can... Actually, I've got Lewis on my show tomorrow, 8 p.m. 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Lewis is going to be on. We're going to be discussing conspiracy theories around P. Diddy.
I'm sorry we didn't give you that birthday card. No one had signed it, is the big problem.
OK, time for a break. One more section to go. Join us to find out if your name is sexist, the upside to being ill, and what you should never, ever lie about. See you soon.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
A furious online debate has been sparked after, well, let's just say a rather large man, I mean, he really was big, was snapped trying to fit into his seat on the plane.
It's led to some to ask whether obese passengers should have to pay for extra plane seats so they don't inconvenience others.
Some say, though, that's cruel. So, should plus-size passengers pay extra for plane seats? Let's talk to former presenter of Fat Families, Steve Miller, who's in Stratford-upon-Avon. and the director of All About Obesity, Sarah LeBrock, who's in beautiful Harrogate. Good to see you both this morning. Sarah, what do you think?
Well, we've had this debate before with Steve and I, to be fair, and I think it's one of those things where planes are just not fit for purpose anymore. So people's bodies have been growing over the years. We know this, the obesity rates are increasing, etc. But what's happening to planes is the seats are decreasing in size. So they're just not fit for purpose and not fit for the population. So I think it's just one of these things where we need to be more empathetic to people, that they're trying to fit into an environment that isn't shaped for them at all. So I think we do need to kind of say, well, what's right here? Is it the person not being able to fit in the seat, or is it the seat not being fit for purpose for the person? And I think we need to really, look at things from that perspective as well. Instead of thinking the person's doing something wrong, how about the environment might be doing something wrong?
Steve?
It's not about blaming, but the message you can't put out, in my opinion, is that it's okay to be obese and don't worry about it. You see, what I'm saying here is free plane seats. If you're offering free plane seats, an extra seat, that's going to normalise obesity.
GB News, the People's Channel. Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the final section of Headliners. In 2024, some people think the women's movement is just for spoiled, overprivileged Westerners. Tell us about this next story from the Mail, Leo.
So, how feminist is your surname? Meet the couples rewriting the marriage rulebook, although their in-laws aren't best pleased. So, young women, or probably middle-aged women as well, when they get married now, they don't want to take their spouse's last name. They might have, you'll have to change business cards and all that sort of stuff. In 2016, only 59% of women wanted to take their spouse's name, according to a poll, and they've only become more determined since. So instead of doing that, instead of taking the spouse's name, they do double barreling. So you get, whatever, Wet and Kears or whatever. But then, like, if kids have double-barreled named people have kids, like, do we just keep getting longer and longer till we're like, it's like the Viennese court in 1600. They also combine the mother's maiden names, so like Elliot and Chippendale into Ellendale, or use the husband's middle name, which all of it sounds like ridiculous.
I love the way you tried to marry yourself off the Cressler there. I thought you were already married and didn't believe in polygamy, but that's amazing.
Yeah.
My friend Dave, his name used to be something else, and then he got married to his wife, obviously. His name used to be David Brent. And so he took her name. Because his life, he just started off in his life and everything was fine. And then that happened,
At a certain point. That makes sense, but I hate all this stuff. Combining Elliot and Chippendale into Ellendale. No. It's very simple. If the woman refuses to take the man's name, it's brilliant because you just then don't marry her because she obviously doesn't grasp what the institution's about, and it's a massive red flag.
Yeah.
So
how single are you?
Hey, because I've got integrity. The only exception, of course, is when a woman has like a professional name, she's an actor or something, I understand keeping it.
Yeah.
But then should a woman who's married even be in work still? And that's where it gets complicated. These are jokes, guys. They're just jokes. I'm a feminist.
In the 1970s, trans people weren't allowed to get married, and if they did, they had to leave the dance group.
Right. I do have a feminist point to end on, which is that actually all these things, many studies show, women's happiness has decreased the more feminist society's got. So I just want women to be happy by taking a men's name.
Yeah.
Oh, how sweet. A new angle for wellness grifters in the Telegraph now, Nick.
Yeah, this is the sickfluencers cashing in on being ill. So we used to call it malingering. So it's one woman here says, I was hit by a wave of fatigue and brain fog, which I found really unnerving. I was like, why is there a block? And the answer is because she was suddenly hit 30 and she was working as a litigation lawyer, which is boring. I mean, that's what happened, but they called it long COVID. I call it life. So I'm sceptical about all of this. These people are gathering together online, forming communities based around their illness. And it's just a terrible... I've heard it described as narcissism. You know, you claim you've got long this and that, and really it's just a way to get attention. I'm sure long COVID exists to be nice, but actually I don't think it exists, so why say that? It's just turning your illness into a good thing, but it's not. It's in your head largely. Different to real illness, which is real.
Yeah, I think the worst thing society ever did was remove the stigma and shame around being sick. Now, you know, we've got a nation of people who just... And you get money. You get money. You get taxpayers' money for being sick. It's it makes you sick.
Is that people aren't grateful when they're not sick. They're so happy to be sick, and I think avoid it at all costs if you can.
And it's very different from people with real illnesses. Before anyone tweets me, if you've got real illnesses, that's very different.
That's why, yes, exactly.
These are people just moaning together online.
And she was signed off. She was signed off work in November 2022. Oh, I wonder what was injected into her before then that might have given her long-term fatigue.
Probably something that's safe and effective and that a lot of people are very keen on to
save lives.
Leo, tell us about this incredibly dignified man in the Sun.
So a Labour MP's husband has been accused of stolen valour for exaggerating his military service. So the badge for veterans of the Iraq War was spotted on this guy. He's the ex-Wolverhampton mayor, and he told voters he had a professional career in the Royal Marines, was pictured wearing a Royal Marine Corps tie and what appears to be a badge for veterans of the Gulf War, 1990 Gulf War. But the Sun understands he failed to complete the 32-week training in 1988 and left at the rank of recruit without earning his coveted green belt. And I knew this. I was there. I flew the helicopter in the Gulf War that was on WikiLeaks shooting journalists.
This
it was brilliant
so
fun.
bad, isn't it? You can't come back from this.
Yeah.
I mean, and to fall out with somebody as scary as a Marine, all the Marines now hate you.
I find this very offensive, as do all my buddies from NAM. And we just, it's this. You've got to watch the Ant Middleton SAS Who Dares Wins when a guy has stolen valour and he just screams in his face. You've got these SAS guys screaming in your face. It's scary. I was like, never do stolen valour. You should never do it. Tim Waltz has been doing it in America, very dodgy. And saying he's in Tiananmen Square when the tanks there, when he wasn't. He's like, I'm kind of a knucklehead. This guy should just say that. I'm kind of a knucklehead sometimes. I like make up stuff.
Back out as soon as you can. OK, we've just got time for the Metro. Good news for people who don't want to watch their language in the pub, Nick.
Yeah, it's landlords ban children from pub and say to hell with those complaining about it. And they're saying, look, they want to bring in under 14s because there's an adult-only space that people don't want to mind their language and so on. And I have to say, even though I'm supposed to be some sort of conservative, I agree with this. Even though I don't go in pubs either. I mean, all I do is sit at home and read. So it's all...
just don't want anyone having any fun. Not you, not them.
Children... The pub is not necessarily for children. There's other places for children. It's like I've had to deal with like screaming children in I've moved out of that house now, but in a house I was in, and they were screaming in the courtyard all day. I just think put children separately. And if you choose to have them, great. We do need to get the birth rates up, but just keep them away from me.
But we need to get birth rates up. As a conservative, you should be number one having children, number two accepting them in the pub. As long as there's none of that big Jenga, you're going to.
I know. I think I'm just an individualist.
Going to the pub. Support British pubs. OK, the show is nearly over, so let's take another quick look at Saturday's front pages. The Daily Mail has Charles, I won't stop Australia ditching crown. The Sun leads with squeaky bug time, something about football. The Mirror has Elton, I don't know how much time I have left. The Telegraph has £1 billion blow to Starmer push for growth. And the Times has investment plan in chaos as Minister insults firm. And finally, the Daily Star, I saw King fly a UFO. And those were your front pages. That's it for tonight's show. Thanks to my guests, Leo Kearse and Nick Dixon. They'll both be back here tomorrow at 11 p.m. with Steve and Alan, who will be here to host. And if you're watching at 5 a.m, then please stay tuned for breakfast. For now, it's good night.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, this weekend it's going to be some unsettled weather around, but lots of dry and bright weather too, though it is going to still remain cold. At the moment, we've got high pressure to the south of the country and low pressure feeding in across Scotland, bringing an unsettled start to the weekend. And overnight too, as we see plenty of those blustery showers continue to feed across Scotland, some pushing into western parts of Northern Ireland too. These heavy at times, turning quite blustery, even seeing some sleet and snow over the Scottish peaks. But elsewhere, a bit more cloud around tonight, which means things aren't going to get quite as cold, but we may see pockets of frost still across parts of central England and Wales. It will still be a cold start though, perhaps just not quite as frosty, but across Scotland, still plenty of clouds, some longer spells of rain, these heavy at times, as I say, quite blustery under those cloudier skies too. A pretty wet start across Northern Ireland as well, but elsewhere, a fair amount of cloud